Hello? Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay, great. Hi, welcome.
Thank you.
We'll just wait a few minutes to get started here.
Okay.
Okay. Hey, can everyone hear me?
Hello.
Yes. Yes.
Hey. Okay. Yeah. Thanks everyone for coming. I'm Nate Solon. I'm one of the co-authors of the book along with Eugene. So yeah, we're just trying like a kind of AMA format. I think we had like 20 something signups on the Luma, so I expect some more people to show up, but we might as well get started. I'm expecting Eugene shortly as well. Just kind of experimenting with this Zoom format. I am recording this. I'll probably post it on YouTube. So I guess if you don't want to be on YouTube, maybe turn off your camera. But anyways, yeah, happy to yeah, any questions or thoughts you have on the book? Hopefully if anyone who already has it is enjoying it. But yeah, just can answer any questions. I guess people you're free to use. I'm not sure if there's like a raise hand feature on Zoom. You could use the chat. We've only got 5 people in here right now, so I guess anyone could just ask a question. Or everyone was just showing up hoping someone else would ask a clever question.
Hey Nate.
Hey Eugene.
Hey guys.
How are you?
Let me get
Hello.
my video. Can you see me?
Yep.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah, so Eugene, I was just sort of kicking it off and opening it up to questions. So I don't know if anyone wants to
Sure.
jump in one.
I
Okay,
guess
well,
I can
oh,
start.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I'm Tim Antonelli. I'm in Worcester, Massachusetts. I just got it this week, and I'm planning to start working through it with my coach. I have gone through a couple exercises. I like the format. I like the idea of it being kind of a workbook, but not um, the tactics sort of puzzles that we're used to, I think. So
Right, right.
I guess I'm just sort of curious about the like subjectivity sometimes of a position and how. So I think you said you organize it by difficulty, easy to hard, which I like. I sort of got the first ones and I found I was in agreement with some of the solutions, which was really nice. um, but I'm curious, as they start to get harder, sort of how do you judge the difficulty of one of these problems where there's not necessarily like one forcing line? Maybe two different people might disagree, or did you two ever disagree on evaluations?
Well, as a matter of fact, I remember I gave Nate some of these positions and he had hard time with them. And he's 2400. And some of them he got easily. So I think it has really nothing to do with your rating. I think it has to do with certain areas of your chess that will be quite visible if they're lacking. So if you're doing it with a coach, and like if I were your coach and I give you a couple of these puzzles, just your thought process will give me a pretty good idea where the problem areas are, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And we each have biases, right? So certain pawn structure we're really good at, or even people in the lower rating range is really good at. And there are other type of structures that even masters have hard time. You see like there is Grand Prix, Sicilian Grand Prix type of structures. There are King's Indian structures. There are French and London system like structures, and they're all, they come with their own little positional nuances.
I do like the emphasis on like writing out your thought, or at least sort of thinking through it thoroughly, which I've been doing. I've been writing it down. I think even just that process is helpful, not just to sort of externalize my thought, but then to compare to the written solutions and see like, okay, I got this and this, but I was completely wrong on, if there's a wrong or right, but I was completely sort of off on this one
Yes.
evaluation or one aspect of the position. So
Yeah,
it
just
makes
to follow up
Go
on the
ahead, Nate.
oh sure. On the subjectivity, yeah, the difficulty is so they are all engine checked. So, the solutions should be pretty well um solid, but you're right that the difficulty is rather subjective. I think there are some, towards the beginning that like probably any strong player will get, and then like Eugene was saying, as you get into it, like more, they're often more specific structures. So I know like going through them with Eugene, like the ones I'm good at, I'm pretty good at, but I also have like I have more big blind spots than a grandmaster would have. So one way hopefully it can be helpful is to kind of identify and diagnose those. Like I remember a while ago with a previous coach, he showed me this like Petrosian game in the King's Indian, which at the time I didn't play for either side. And like I could not guess a single move. Like I didn't know any of the ideas. So he was like, oh, okay, like I stumped you with this one. I think that's yeah, chess is like very specific to structures and openings. So usually in your structures that you're comfortable with
Right.
might seem quite obvious, but if it's like the Grand Prix and you've never played the Grand Prix, uh, it might be very difficult. Okay, I see in the chat, is there an elo below which the exercise wouldn't be useful at all? Yeah, I don't know if there's a hard cutoff, but I would say we did kind of think like we thought of it as like sort of intermediate to advanced. So it's not, if you're just starting chess, I wouldn't really recommend this particular book as like your first chess book. In terms of truly beginning books, I think Peter Giannatos just came out with this one called Everyone's First Chess Workbook that I really like. Um, Eugene, do you have a favorite beginning book?
Let me think. Like beginner's book. This is not a question for me because I'm mostly focused on coaching people like in the intermediate advanced category. For beginners, I mean, pretty much books that have to do with basic tactical patterns. Um, once people are really good at like checkmates and ones and twos, and they're not dropping pieces, I would say this book is totally doable.
Yeah,
Um,
the other one I was trying to think of is Learn to Play Chess Like a Boss by Patrick Wolf. But yeah, I mean there are a
yeah,
lot of good beginner books. I would say probably the biggest pitfall is choosing too many. Like pick one good book, from a solid recommendation and stick with that one.
yep, yep. And talking about the different levels, like even though the book is designed to each chapter to progress from easier to harder, you can still jump around. You don't have to do a chapter. Like you can get to maybe 20 in each chapter and stop and go to another chapter and then do 20 there. Like, it's not designed that you have to finish the chapter to get to the next chapter, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I like that you said that. Sorry to jump in again, because I was wondering about that as well. I tend to be very linear, and I kind of do want to break away from that because I really want to get to the ones that you mentioned in the intro where you say you're trying to visualize. I'm working on, blindfold exercise and visualizing in general, but
Right.
really, that would be very useful in a practical or in an OTB game, visualizing a position 3 or 4 moves ahead and then evaluating that position. So I might skip ahead after getting my feet wet a bit more.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
you may even skip that chapter, visualization chapter, and then move to the next one, which is comparison, right? And just do the comparison first, just to get an idea of like how the thought process works using 2 moves, because that's, I think, more practical. And visualization, it's about building that muscle, right? That visualization may be even more difficult to visualize the position, yet forget about eval, just visualizing the pieces
Right.
on the board in itself is difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're definitely totally fine to you could really do the book in any order. It does kind of gradually build in complexity, but there's not the earlier chapters are not really prerequisites. It's just kind of different ways of practicing
Yep.
evaluation. Okay, yeah, if anyone else has a question on their mind, feel free to jump in. We might just have to start doing puzzles.
Yeah, we can do some puzzles. Are there any questions from Twitter coming I'm not, because usually we have a big
I'll
questions coming in that world sometimes.
I'll check the thread to see if anyone
Mhm.
left any.
And while Nate is checking, the other thing that some of the puzzles actually I got wrong, like some of the positions from my own games that I got wrong. Just to tell you that it could vary the difficulty level from 1200 to Grandmaster. And I feel like even the ones that I got wrong, the thought process why I got them wrong is instructive for all levels. So that's where that value comes in. Like, even if you get it wrong, it doesn't matter. The thought process that you applied might be just as wrong as my thought process.
Okay. So we don't have any on Twitter.
Okay, we can maybe send a reminder on Twitter.
Yeah, maybe
because people are quite active there in case they forgot.
Sure, I'll do that right now.
Yep, and you guys can ask us in the chat as well.
I can, not to take over, I could sort of jump in the meantime. I have lots
Sure.
of and thoughts. But I wanted to touch on something Nate said about the engine, because I was also curious. I mean, I assumed the positions were sort of checked with an engine, but I know how strongly Nate, I follow his blog. I know how he feels about centipons, for example. And you give a sort of talk about in the intro, different metrics of evaluation. So I'm just sort of curious, like one thing the engine might not tell you is like the playability. When reading this, Magnus Carlsen 60 games, and it's talking a lot about how Magnus goes for playable positions, or one which might not be like better by the engine, but is easier for one side to find moves. So I don't know if you would take that into account, or how exactly you would use the engine to sort of check these solutions, other than like, oh no, that just blunders a piece or something.
Yeah, absolutely. I can answer that question. So the most difficult thing with the engine is interpreting what it means. So for example, I'll give you, if there is one line that says you're completely winning, let's say +5, but if you make one wrong move along that line and you're losing, right? So you have this very narrow path that's +5, and the engine says, oh, that's the best move. But let's say the second line is +3, and no matter if you make like second best move or third best move, it's still +3. To us, right, to humans, that's much more playable than some random forced line that only results in this +5. To engine, there is, it's clear that's going to always play the +5 move. And that's what we really mean by human eval, right? So when we check with the engine, we would say, for example, like we can give move A or move B. Move A is +5, move B is +3. We don't really care, right, that you play, that's the move that's +3. So we specifically focus on positions where the eval is not dramatically affected, right? So sometimes the move that you suggest, or like in certain answers, you see 11 moves give plus, equal, or more, right? In certain answers. Well, that's a pretty serious eval, that you can play pretty much any useful move and you're just much better. So I think that's important to ask yourself a question: how many moves give me this eval that I am about to write, and then check in the answer. And sometimes we don't give all the, we don't have enough room in the pages, right, to give you all the different possibilities. So even though you got the eval right and your move is maybe slightly different than our move, your move may still be correct, unless it has like concrete specifics of the position. So yeah, I don't know, maybe that's a little bit more overloaded like answer, but does it make sense, Tim?
Yeah, I think it makes sense, and it sort of lines up too with something that I can't remember if Nate had written, or something that I've just been sort of thinking about. Is like, I came into chess thinking like there's one best move, and maybe that's because you look at the engine and it, like you said, +5 and then +3. Okay, this is the one best move objectively, but there's probably lots of moves that are decent or fine or more playable even. So it's a lot thinking that there's not just one solution, I guess.
And one thing that we love, part of the reasons why we wrote this book is we were inspired by the neural network engines like AlphaZero and Lila Chess. And the way the neural network engines work is closer to how humans think, because the neural network eval function is in these type similar positions. We play this type of a move, right? So neural networks don't calculate if there is a move 17, checkmate and 17 moves, right? That the old school alpha, what do you call them? Was it algorithm? Alpha, beta? No, beta.
Yeah,
Nate, what's that algorithm called?
Alpha beta.
Alpha, beta, exactly. So that's all algorithm. It calculates the best moves for both sides, period. But that's different. Neural engine don't work like that. They work what is typical in these types of positions, right? So if you think about, let's just say some London system position with the pawns on like d4, c3, and e3, and the bishops on f4, right? And the knight on f3 and the pawn on h3. If black does not have any counterplay there, the eval is not going to change that dramatically. Whether you put, with the bishop on d3, you put knight on e5, or you put like, queen on e2 or rook on d1, the eval is going to be very subtle, maybe go between 0.2 to 0.5. But they're all in the same range.
So would you suggest this as a follow-up? Would you suggest then if using an engine to do some analysis to expand it to a few?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So
that
don't
makes
have
sense.
2 lines, right? Or 1 line, because that's not going to give you the information. If you have 10 lines, and within 10 lines, you go between 0.2 to +1, that's a pretty good range. And your eval is either I am much better or I am a little bit better. But as long as you have that range, you understand the position is so sound that it's very hard to mess it up. And that is directly linked to opening preparation. So when you're studying openings and you have a chessable course or some other book, and somebody's telling you in this position, play this move, right? You should always think of a general picture. Do I have to play this one move here and everything is bad? Or wait a second, I can play 5 other moves and my eval is still the same. So being able to understand when is the critical moment when you have to find 1 or 2 only moves versus when you have a range of many moves.
Yeah. Just to add a few thoughts, that one thing that's really cool is there's actually a bot on Lichess that is Lila 0 with no calculation. It's called LazyBot. So this is like a real thing that you can play against. I think it's like 2,500 plus blitz.
Oh,
so,
wow.
It's not easy to beat at all. So that's kind of a funny demonstration of the power of evaluation.
So
and
it just doesn't calculate. It calculates maybe 1 or 2 moves deep, right? Within 1 second.
It doesn't have so there's it's sort of the Lila calculation module is this like Monte Carlo tree search thing. It doesn't have that. All it has is the policy, which is like just a probability distribution over the moves. So that's sort of what it starts with ordinarily, but with the LazyBot, it just plays the top one without calculating. And yeah, it's quite good actually. Like sometimes it'll blunder some tactics because like it can't really, it can't see very far ahead, obviously. But it does play, the moves it plays generally look like pretty good kind of human moves. And then I just wanted to say one other technique Eugene taught me that's really good for working with the engine is if you want to know the plan for one side, the technique is to play against the engine as the other side, meaning, so like, okay, I'm getting the end of my opening preparation. I want to know the plan for white. So one thing you can do is like hide the engine moves, start playing as black. Don't think too hard, just play natural moves and then play the engine's top response. So then what you'll see very quickly is how the engine crushes someone like you who's just playing natural human moves. And you can try your first thought, the engine always crushes you. Try something else, it crushes you in some other way. And actually very quickly, you'll start to see like the typical plans and patterns You know, and if you catch an unprepared opponent, they'll probably do something similar to what you did, and like you're sort of already ready with the plans to beat that.
Yeah, and you had a nice win, Nate, against Penguin GM with
Oh
this
yeah.
London system. Like, I think it started as a Jobava London.
Yeah,
And this guy,
that was one
he's
of my
like,
best wins in Titled Tuesday, and yeah, I got to use this typical plan in the Jobava.
and he's probably like world top 5 bullet player. I mean, he is like legendary. Penguin GM is his name. He's a Grandmaster. He's not like super high rated. He's like what, 2550 probably.
Yeah, I'm
But
not
yeah,
sure what his FIDE rating is, but he's really good at the faster time controls. Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, and I played a Jobava. Yeah, a few patterns were like he won this queenside pawn, which I didn't really know this at the time, but that can be dangerous to go over after. But then the key moment was I could castle, but I just played G4 to start like a kingside attack, which is like a very typical pattern in that opening, you know, that you will know if you've done an exercise like this.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and the attack sort of played out itself. Like you didn't have to calculate or almost do any difficult decisions, right, during that
Yeah,
game.
knowing these little game plans and patterns and specific structures, sometimes you get very easy wins, even against strong players, if they're not in their comfort zone in a certain type of position.
I actually had a question. So I'm curious about the sort of like psychological effects of even evaluating well, because sometimes like if I be a little bit too optimistic about position, I might end up making potentially probably mistakes, but making certain moves that will obviously like show my optimism. But with increasing your understanding of evaluating a position, I'm curious if y'all have any thoughts about how gaining a skill and evaluation can affect your over the board play. Like if you get a little bit too passive when you understand, like when you know that, oh, this is slightly worse, and then you kind of go down a particular path that might be, in that slightly worse feel. How do you
Yeah,
feel about
Nate, I can answer this one.
Sure.
So this is very similar to what I was taught by Grandmaster Josef Dorfman, Joseph Dorfman. He was Kasparov's coach during the famous Karpov matches. He actually wrote a book called The Method in Chess, and he is a big proponent of teaching about statics and dynamics. Okay, this is very important when you evaluate positions. In our book, I think I gave in my coaches section a little bit of an intro to him and to his method. So if you guys have the book, you can kind of open that page and check it out. But basically the concept is...
By the way, those intros were really, really great. I really enjoyed reading them and just
I really appreciate it, because I feel like it's not quite the actual puzzles, but it's kind of a nice little...
It was very special that you did it. And I actually went and watched some documentaries too. And it was
thank you.
Giving tribute to your coaches. I thought it was very well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, because I learned a lot from them and how they evaluate positions. And I wanted to just give you a little bit of that window. But to go back to Dorfman, he basically explained exactly what your question was. How do you know when to change the nature of the position, right? And he basically explained that there are statics and dynamics in chess. And statics are things that don't usually change with time, right? So give you some examples. Let's say you have big space advantage that's not going to change from like King's Indian structure, for example, or from some other opening. 2 bishops, that could be a long-term static advantage. Pawn structure, like double pawns, isolated pawns. These are static things. King safety, if one king is weak and unlikely to be fixed anytime soon because of the bad pawn formation in front of the king, that's bad. And so you create the list of all the factors in the position, we do it subconsciously, grandmasters do. We immediately kind of make this list in our head, but for people who are lower rate, they kind of have to maybe walk through each of these factors. And at the end of the day, they say with natural play, if one side has all these static advantages and about to get to the outpost. So in the book, I talk about this D5 outpost, how in these structures, the knight gets to D5. That's it. A strong player will always dominate and may outplay weaker player in these positions. So the critical moment happens with evaluation. If you don't, if you just look at the material, you're like, okay, so he has that outpost, material is even, I'll just play passively and I'll hope for the best. That's not the right strategy, because that's going to happen as the static factors dominate, you're going to run out of moves. You're going to have hard time making decisions. You're more likely to get in time pressure. You're more likely to blunder. And then, did you lose the game because you blundered? No, you lost the game because you made the passive decision out of the opening to go into that setup. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I think
okay.
To just oh,
Oh,
sorry.
go ahead.
I was just going to add one thing. So I think if I understood the question correctly, another part of it is sort of if my evaluation becomes too accurate, too sort of sober in a sense, would I become maybe more pessimistic than, is there some power to optimism, even if it is not entirely realistic? And I think it's a great question. And like, there are famous examples of this. Vladimir Kramnik comes to mind of, if you ever watch his post-game interviews, famously, he thinks he's winning in every position. And like, often he's wildly over optimistic, but it seems to be working pretty well for him, right? Like, this guy is a legend. So I would say, I don't think, evaluating positions more accurately, I don't think it will hurt you. Like, to Eugene's point, it can be very valuable to know when you need to change the position before it's too late. But yeah, I would say probably, like, if you have to err on the side of optimism or pessimism, yeah, probably optimism. It seems like I can definitely think of examples in chess history of players who were more optimistic than accurate, but incredibly effective. I can't think of too many examples of the opposite, players who are sort of wildly pessimistic and incredibly strong players. So I think, there needs to be some aspect of sort of seeing the good factors of your position and making the most of them.
And the great book that talks about that is Positional Decision Making by Gelfand and Agard, where Gelfand talks about his games, which is modern games with top GMs. And he constantly references Akiba Rubinstein, who he learned the best from. And he looks at those old games with modern eyes, and he's like, well, I can't believe these guys are like sheep playing so passively and get into this bad position. Of course, here you have to sacrifice a pawn to seek counterplay. To him, it's obvious, to Gelfand, but to the top players of that time, they did not sense the danger until it was too late. And that's where the dynamic factors come in. The moment you realize statically with natural moves, yours is going to be worse, and worse, look for ways to change things up, sacrifice a pawn, open up your position. Maybe it's unsound. Maybe you're going to lose, but change the nature of the position. And in that example by Dorfman, he plays this weird move A5 out of the opening, then A4. And then I talk about the exchange sacrifice to kind of distract white and get dynamic counterplay in the center. And the game becomes very tactical, right? And in the tactical game, it could be anybody's game.
Okay, cool. Yeah, maybe we can, if someone has another question, maybe we could move on to a new one. Oh, yeah, Eugene, what's the
I think it was called Positional Decision Making in Chess or something like this.
That's the Gelfand one. I think the Dorfman one is the method in chess, right?
The method in chess, but you can't really buy. I think it's like too expensive because it's it's like limited edition type of thing, and it may be too expensive if you look for it online.
I did see he also did he did a video series on Chess24.
Oh yeah, that's an
with,
excellent one. I did not watch it in its entirety, but he basically talks about his thought process with Jan Gustafsson on Chess24.
Yeah.
I would
So
highly
maybe
recommend people watch that. Yeah.
Yeah, that could be another option if the book is if the book.
And you know who spoke highly of that book of just the whole concept? Out of all the people, Grishuk. You would not think that Grishuk, who is like a deep calculator who goes into these huge time pressures, he actually really loved Dorfman's book.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah, so anyone who has a question, feel free to either unmute or you could type in the chat, or if not, maybe we can try some puzzles.
And we were also inspired by Matthew Sadler and his great interview on Perpetual Pod with Ben. If you guys listen to that, that's great. He talks about how when he was a kid, he wished he would focus more on eval. And he's a strong grandmaster in 2650, right? Or even more. So that's definitely an important concept that no one talks about in chess literature.
Yeah, that was definitely an inspiration for I had meant to sort of put a shout out to him in the book. I don't know.
We mentioned briefly in
Okay.
one of the intro chapters him
Okay, good.
in the book, but yeah, maybe we should give him more credit for inspiring us.
Yeah,
because he did a lot of work with chess engines, and he still does. He runs the openings for these TCC engine championships.
actually, his I've been really enjoying his YouTube channel. Like recently, he's been doing these videos where he does an overview of the opening repertoire of the top engines, so just how Leela plays d4, and it'll be split into, maybe a Slav video and Nimzo video or whatever. But I find it to be a really great way of like very quickly getting sort of an overview of like what's going on in major opening systems, because I don't know, just between the way the engines play it and his explanations, I don't know, I come away from the video feeling like, okay, I sort of understand what the Slav is all about now.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, if you want to make that part of your repertoire, you're going to have to fill in some details. But it's nice to sort of feel oriented, especially even in openings you don't play. Just, maybe if there's some opening you don't play, but it's like, okay, now if I ever wanted to pick this up, I kind of know the main lines and what the main line with best play looks like.
Yeah, maybe we can jump into some concrete examples from the book. Do you want me to share my chess base, Nate? Or
okay, sure. Yeah. Are you able to
hold on. Let me.
Oh, okay. Here we go. I just made you co-host, so okay, you should be able to share.
All right, let me just get to my chess base.
Or if you have any new position, this will have to be for the future.
Oh, actually, this is a good one. Maybe we can take some new positions that neither of us have seen before. This is even more challenging,
yeah,
putting us on the spot.
You have some ideas that hopefully we'll have time to get around to, of like potentially sort of a supplement or add-on with like for instance, we were looking at a bunch of Ferrugia's games, because I think he seems to be quite influenced by the neural network engine. So there's some moments in his games that are really interesting there. It seems like he's going for positions that he's evaluated better than his grandmaster opponents.
Yeah, Ferrugia definitely comes to mind. We saw some of his amazing games from the I think that was European club championship, like I don't remember, it was this year or last year. Maybe just to first, I want to, before we jump into something completely new territory, I'll pick some simple examples from the book first. Let me just do, I like the comparison chapter as people usually have easy choices between two moves. Maybe I'll just pick one from there. Give me a second to find something. Okay, so let me think which one I'm gonna start with. It's maybe a little bit more advanced. Okay, this is a nice and easy one. I think this is, let's start with a nice and easy one. Okay, let me see if I can share this window.
Yeah, and I do, Luca, I see your question. So it's, yeah, it's the channel I was thinking of. It's actually called Silicon Road, which is Matthew Sadler's book as well.
Can you guys see my board? It's my chess base board, chess base.
Yep.
So some of you may already know the answer to this one because you've probably seen it in the book. This is from the eval. I mean, not the eval, the comparison chapter. And you're asked the question, right, to play A3 or A4. Like, to me, this is one of the basic concepts. And I was shocked when I would give this position to people 1800 level, and they are still thinking. They're like, let me think about it. Like, there's a certain level in chess, you don't even think, you just know the answer to this question. Because even if people, how they react to this question tells me a lot of their sort of basic understanding of certain structures and endgame patterns.
You know what was surprising to me about this one was, you know, so it's clear to me that between A3 and A4, A3 is definitely a better move because, you know, because I can see A4, you know, the dark squares are weak, the knight's coming to C5, I can't advance my pawn majority. But the part that was surprising to me was that after A3, I thought white would be better because I thought the bishop looks better than the knight. You know, queenside pawn majority can be an advantage. If I remember correctly, the computer is really not minding black's position. You know, it's white's not worse.
Not impressed, right?
White may not have any advantage either.
Yep, and I generally would agree with you that my first assessment after A3, white's maybe a tad better because of the, you know, the monster bishop, and the knight has no outpost in the center, and white has the easier creation of the passed pawn. But we have to realize, again, when we talk about this experiment that we do with the engines, right? Initially, the computer will say position is equal or maybe close to equal. But if you were to flip the board and play this out as black against the engine, you'll probably lose most of the games. You see what I mean? Because like the engine will always find the best moves for black, no matter what you're going to throw at the engine. But from a practical point of view, right? Because keep in mind, there's the objective eval and then there's the practical eval. A practical eval is black would get into trouble with you know, second-rate moves, passive play.
That's
so
actually,
I think we have to kind of make that big explanation between the practical and the objective.
someone. Wait, I'm gonna try to mute someone who's. I don't even know who it is. Anyway, oh, I wanted to add one thought, you know, going back to I think it was Tim's question about the subjectivity. We also tried to use a bit of our own human perspective. So I'd say after A3, the computer says it's equal. In a game between humans, I would guess that white is going to win more often of the games that are decisive. So we did try to bring a little bit of the human perspective and kind of take the engine evaluations with a grain of salt as well.
Yeah, so maybe the answer would be like white is a tad better, or like the engine says the position is roughly equal, but we prefer white because X, Y, and Z, and we explain the factors. And by the way, as a, you know, obviously, let's mention A4. Here we have highlighted that knights come into D7, C5. It's an outpost, meaning that you can never kick that knight out. that means these 2 pawns paralyze the 3 pawns. So virtually, black has an extra e6 pawn. And statically, white is done for the rest of the game. White can't improve his position. Therefore, with natural moves, little by little, black will activate the king, get the knight to c5. It's still a lot of work, but it's sort of a one-sided train here. We're just going to be slowly improving. We're going to start pushing these pawns, and this extra pawn is key. And the b3 pawn is actually quite weak too. So any questions about this position?
Eugene, do you happen to have a new position that we could try? I don't. We haven't prepared that specifically, so I don't know if you do, but maybe that could be fun if there is one.
I mean, I can think of something new. Off the top of my head, I don't have anything concrete. No, I do have. Let me try to think. There is a game that my student. Let me see if I can open that. From my student's game, he just recently gave me really great material for the possibly next edition. Let me see if I can find that. So while I'm looking for it, maybe you can answer some questions here.
Sure. Yeah. Anyone, please feel free to pop in with a question and just unmute or in the chat if anything has popped into your mind.
I'm curious, you may have answered this before, I'm not sure, but how long did it take you guys to put this all together, to write the book?
Ooh, wow, longer than I could.
Longer than we would like.
When did you start it?
So you had started a while ago, I assume. This is going back a few years, or?
Maybe the whole thing took about a year. Does it? I'm trying to remember exactly when we started it.
I think that's about right. We probably talked about starting the book last year about the same time, maybe a little bit earlier. But then the actual chess part was ready by May, June timeframe, maybe May. And then there's a lot of non-chess thing that needs to be done.
That was the big thing. I'd say it was like 80 to 90% done quite some time ago, but it turns out that last 10% of like edits, formatting, just getting everything set up, trying to proofread, that was the part that really, I mean, this is my first book. I've never written a book before, and since it's self-published, we were doing all of that ourselves. So
and you from scratch had to learn the tool. What is it called?
Oh yeah, so we're using ChessBase obviously, and then for this book we used LaTeX, which is like I'm sure some people are familiar with it, but it's for formatting. Well, you can use it for books, it's used for academic papers and stuff, but I don't know, it's not the easiest thing to use. So in retrospect, maybe it was the best choice, but we finished it eventually.
Yeah, it looks great. I mean, the presentation also, because it's not easy, I'm sure, and it looks really very professional. So, well
thanks.
done.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear, because I know, I mean, like any other field, formatting a book, it's like there's a lot that goes into it, and I'm sure if someone who works in that field full time looked at the book, I'm sure they could find things where they would say, we would do this a little bit differently, but overall I'm pretty happy with how it turned out.
Yeah, I mean, we even had all these other aspirations like color photographs. So for example, my coaches, and we're thinking about like AlphaZero, Lila type of versus Stockfish examples, and Firuja, as Nate pointed out, like there's so many things that we were thinking to add, but there's always chance to add all that stuff in like volume 2 and more puzzles, because ideally we want to do more puzzles than just the puzzles we have in this book, but we wanted just to get it done, to get it out there, to get feedback, and then try to, if there's a lot of, if people really enjoy it and people really like it, it's not that difficult to keep coming up with very instructive examples, either from our own games or from the games, like, you know, current events, like we see all the time, top players making mistakes, and also from a lot of the games are taken from club players in the rating range 1400 to 1900 also. So if you look at like the random names that are not like Kasparov and Karpov and Carlsen, that's and not Nate and I, or student games, that's sort of the other bulk of the material.
That's I was really happy with that, actually. I think that was like definitely a breakthrough for us in the process when we started looking at those club games. I really think more books should do that, because it was actually way easier to find instructive examples in those games than top Grandmaster games are often like very subtle and hard to understand. So they're a bit harder to use for instructive examples.
All right, so guys, we have a new puzzle. I have it from my student's point of view is black, but I can flip the board because it's actually white to move. So I'm going to flip the board here. And since I already know the answer to this one, I'll let you guys think about it. And you have a choice, obviously, between queen takes c3 and pawn takes c3. And one is clearly better than the other. Nate may already know the answer just by peeking at this position for 5 seconds or 15 seconds. But maybe I'll let Nate talk through his thought process here.
Okay, well, I definitely have a strong first reaction, but I'm also very worried.
Yeah, you're being kind of put on the spot a little bit.
So my first thought is, if I play b takes c3 with, take with the pawn, that c pawn is a backward pawn on the c file. Black can put a rook on the c file, maybe bishop a6 to control the c4 square, maybe double the rooks. That looks very unpleasant. It looks like my backward pawn on c3 is going to come under quite a lot of pressure. Whereas queen takes c3, okay, my queen can get hit on the c file, but I'll just move it away. Structurally, the position is, symmetrical, so it seems okay. So my thought is queen takes c3 but I am paranoid that structurally I think that reasoning is sound. I'm just a little bit scared that there's some like concrete move by move factor that's going to blow me out. So
yep. So there's this constant fear, and I can understand it because I have sometimes the same thing. Is we have our biases in chess, and while 90% of the time certain move is correct, we always have to challenge that bias, and that's what Nate is doing with that thought process. So even though he probably already knows what the best move is, he is constantly challenging himself. Well, let me actually look at this position concretely. While 9 out of 10 times I'll take with the queen, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I should take with the pawn. And he is double checking himself. And this self-regulation is happening all the time on strong players' head. We have no time on the clock. We'll just make a move instantly. But if you do have the time, it's always good to question your biases and dogmatic thought processes. Sometimes.
Plus, I have an additional sort of context clue here in that, given that you've selected this position, I start wondering, has Eugene chosen one that would be perhaps like counterintuitive and where my instinct would be wrong? Is that the big idea?
Yeah, some authors do that, right? No, that's not really. I think this one is a little bit more straightforward. So you're right. The answer is queen takes is best by far, which was actually not played by a 2100 rated player in an OTB game. So a 2100 rated player made very big positional mistake to take in with the pawn. Right. So I would expect a 2100 rated player would never, ever take with the pawn unless there's a very specific reason to. Yet we see all the time these positional mistakes, eval mistakes are happening. And so he was probably, let me putting myself into white's player's shoes. He was like, well, I'm not going to give up the C file with the tempo. Just like, no way I'm going to do that. Right? But so what? You gave up the file, you dropped the queen back, you attack the H6 pawn temporarily. You're going to fight for the file right back. And an earlier question about psychology and optimism. Yeah, you're white and you have to admit that you're not better. It's difficult to do in chess. Sometimes you want to play for a win even when the position does not allow that. And I'm pretty sure the ambition overruled his chess understanding because he took with a pawn. This is the backwards pawn. This is static weakness. What does he have for the static weakness? I don't really see anything.
You know what's interesting as well is obviously there's a very famous rule that you capture towards the center with pawns.
Right, that's
of course,
true.
one of the big challenges with chess is like understanding when the rules are relevant, understanding when there are many factors in the position, which one is actually important. So here, I would say, we're capturing towards the center, but we're not really, white's not really fighting to take over the center in any meaningful way.
Right, it's not like C4 is coming or even E4 we're afraid of, right? So just to illustrate what happened next in this game, because I really like the practical element of this, is black did not even play the best moves according to the engines. They played, there's probably like 5 moves that give the same eval, but his moves are very easy. Rook here, F3. So clearly white is trying to seize the center with E4. Black just ignores it and plays bishop A6. I would have probably played rook C4 myself. And again, this is one of those things that the engine will give both moves advantage. And because the engine has to give a certain move a bigger advantage than the other, maybe the engine will prefer rook C4 over bishop A6. But honestly, statically, things don't change, and black just takes over the game. E4, he just ignores it, bishop C4. This pawn on E4 is not really going to make it or break it. E5, so what? There's no attack against the king. There are no knights on the board. You can't generate an attack. So black is just little by little suffering here on the queen side. I mean, white is queen A4, hitting the A pawn, rook D2, rook C6, easy plan, just play double, and maybe B5. So there was actually a tactical solution here coming up that my student missed. So after doubling, he could have won on the spot. And this is, again, where tactics come in, right? Usually tactics come in from strategically better positions. So can you guys spot the winning tactic for black here?
Rook takes C3, and then fork on
Exactly.
D4.
Yeah. Good job. So yeah, you can take immediately, or you can insert this, and it's game over because of the fork. So funny enough, my student missed this because he was not in the state of mind to look for tactics, perhaps. I don't know. He plays positional moves, queen A5, and he's still completely dominating. Bishop D2, rook C4, rook F2. See how white is just basically totally passive here? King H7, because black can do whatever he wants. Statically, things are not going to change the next few moves. So he overprotects this H6 pawn just in case. King G2, rook C7. Again, black is not in a hurry. Bishop E1, B5. And you see little by little, black is making progress. This reminds me of games by Capablanca and Alekhine, right, Nate? Where these guys are just so good at technical chess. And their opponents are not really putting up much of a fight. They have these beautiful games where they just dominate.
Yeah, I like this one because it's pretty much a pure evaluation example, talking about that first move, the decision of how to capture on C3. Like, there's not really any calculation at all that's relevant. It's just, is the position better with the pawn on B2 or on C3?
Yep. And then just to give you a couple more moves to see how black got a winning position from this. White kept being passive. notice that he just played rook d7 without any concrete, maybe tactical threats, but he is expecting white to take, or to take himself and maybe put pressure on the d file, because this is going to be a pin. So white did take, and he took with the rook. This is exactly what black wanted. G4, again, this is a typical mistake of players who already realize they have no counterplay. At this position, while white is probably long-term going to lose the game, playing moves like G4 or F4 for no concrete reason is only going to speed up the end for white, because you're weakening your king. And that's pretty much what happened. Queen D8, now E5 is a big threat. F4 was played, weakening this diagonal a little bit more. And after Queen C7, hitting the F pawn, and Queen C6, white just collapses here with King G1 and B4. It's game over. So if you look back at this example, black really didn't do anything to win this game. He even missed a tactic that won, but he just won the game because of white's poor decision to take back with a pawn. Just like Nate said, it all stems back to this one decision.
Okay, so I think we're coming up to the top of the hour. So probably since we finished that example, probably a good time to wrap it up. I guess if anyone did have one more question they wanted to get in, we could still do that. Okay, so I see I'm trying to improve my visualization, calculation, and evaluation skills. Suggestion on the order. I don't know. I think in chess often you kind of everything sort of comes all together, you know. So if you go through our book, you will get a little bit of all of the above. Certainly visualization, there's a chapter on that. Not as much calculation, because the book's kind of explicitly not a calculation book.
But you still have to calculate one or two moves.
Yeah, but I mean, there's not really any ideas in chess that are completely disconnected from moves. Like the moves and ideas are always connected. So yeah, I would say I don't really have a specific order in mind. And also, I guess I should say as well, like, the point of the book is not that calculation is not important. It's obviously also very important. It's just a different perspective, you know, a different part of the game that you can also strengthen.
Right. It's kind of reminds me of the question, should I study openings, middle games, or end games? Well, ideally, right, you should be good at all three, but theoretically, like, which one, if you have a limited amount of time, right, Nate? If somebody asked me that question, I only have 1 hour a day and I can only do one of these three things: openings, middle games, or end games. What do I do? So this reminds me of the same question.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a strong sense on the order. I think it's a good idea to have like sort of ongoing chess work that you just do on a continuous basis. So, you know, maybe you just do 15 minutes of like tactical puzzles every day, and that's good to do. And then on top of that, you can do kind of one-off segments. So maybe, you know, so it's like I'm doing my 15 minutes of tactics every day, but maybe for this month I'll put a focus on evaluation, and then next month I'll work on visualization, or, you know, they call in athletic training, they call that periodization. So I do think everything's connected, but there is something to you can't train everything intensively at once. So you can sort of pick a part of your game that you feel needs work and focus on it for a little while.
And usually there's no one right answer. It all is very, very individual. Like, chess players have flaws and weaknesses and pluses and minuses, and usually each player is very individual. Like, when I teach my students, I don't necessarily have every single one of them in a certain rating range do the same exercises. It really depends, and individual plan is best. So my answer is do whatever you enjoy the best. because you're gonna improve no matter what. As long as you study chess and you do any of these things, you should be good.
Okay, maybe that's probably a good note to wrap it up on. So yeah, thanks everyone.
Yeah, thank you
for coming.
guys.
I hope you're enjoying the book if you got it, or I don't know. If you showed up for this and you don't have it yet, I hope you'll be convinced to get it. Yeah, leave us a review on Amazon. And yeah, feel free to, if you want to get in touch with me on Twitter or any other medium, if you have any other thoughts on the book, feel free to.
Yep. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.